This special meeting, budget hearing of the Township Council is called to order. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, be advised that adequate notice of this special meeting budget hearing of the Township Council of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, was made by posting on the bulletin board at the municipal complex and transmitted to the officially designated newspapers, indicating that this special meeting budget hearing would take place at the Franklin Township Municipal Complex at 7 p.m. on Thursday, February 21st, 2017. In addition, the copy of this notice is and has been available to the public, and it's on file in the office of the municipal clerk. If we would all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Republic for which God indivisible. Madam Master Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Chase. Here. Councilwoman Francois. Mayor Kramer.
Here.
Councilman Oni Jaka. Councilman Prasad. Councilwoman Robinson. Councilwoman Sherman.
Here.
Councilman Vasanella.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Wright.
Here. We are now moving on to public discussion. So this is why we needed a quorum, to be able to vote to have a public discussion. Anyone in favor, or do I have a motion to start the meeting for public discussion?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
We're not a quorum now. Mr. Wright has left the room. We are not a quorum. Kimberly's here. Kimberly, come in the door, please. Thank you. We are now a quorum again. Do we have a motion to open the meeting for public discussion?
So moved. Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. The meeting is now open for public discussion, limited to half an hour, 2 minutes per person. Anyone wishing to speak, please come up to the mic and state your name and address.
Mayor, seeing no one from the public looking to come up, I will motion to close the public discussion portion of the meeting.
We have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, and just for the purpose of the TV viewers, there's only staff members and members of the press here. Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Public discussion is closed. We are fortunate enough to have approval of the warrants. That was kind of snuck in here. Warrants in the amount of $868,927.77 on February 14th, 2017 are presented to the Township Council for payment. Do I have a motion on the warrants?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry.
Do a
No,
roll
this is
call.
a roll call. We're spending money.
Councilman Chase.
Yes.
Councilwoman Francois.
Yes.
Mayor Kramer.
Yes.
Councilwoman Robinson.
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman.
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Wright.
Okay. We are now on to the main business of this meeting, and that is the departmental budget presentation. These are items A through O, and so we have a number of departments to go through. This is I'm speaking to members of the council, this is a budget meeting. We are all always tempted to ask operational questions of these people because we don't see them that often. But with A through O, various items, that could wind up being a long meeting. So I would ask that council members refrain from operational questions unless they directly affect the budget, and we can have any of these people back at any time if you would like to discuss something with them. I believe it's in March that the police will be coming, or when?
Initially, we're planning on bringing them in the second meeting of March, yes.
So we will have opportunity to discuss that with the police. So, Mr. Manager, if you would take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first departmental budget that we will discuss is the municipal court. Municipal court tab falls right after the interlocal tab. It's towards the back of the departmental tabs. And we have Kayla Martinez, our municipal court administrator, is here with us today. I will just do a quick intro to her budget. Her budget is proposed at $25,750, and her 2016 budget was $25,750. And to be honest with you, actually Kayla presented me with a budget of $25,500, and I added $250 to her budget after a discussion I had with the presiding municipal court of Somerset County, Judge Kelleher. All of you should be familiar with Judge Kelleher. His name has been spoken here in this room on several occasions in the past, specifically when we were in transition with our municipal court. Judge Kelleher asked me to add the $250 in the event that we had to pay a visiting judge, and that the administrative office of the courts requires that there be a nominal amount included in all municipal budgets for that purpose. Although we have two judges, and it's very infrequent that we have to bring a visiting judge in. I will add, while I was on the phone with Judge Kelleher, he remarked to me that he was thrilled with the turnaround that our municipal court has made, and that everything is going in the direction that it needs to be going in, and that our backlog has been reduced to the 30% mark from up around 60% plus that it was at previous to Kayla coming here, so she can have a little feather in her cap. And there are very, very little as far as changes to her municipal budget, her departmental budget from last year, just some shuffling of money to more match the spending that she's done in 2016. So if you have any questions of Kayla, she's here to answer them. And I see no one jumping to the microphone with questions, so thank you, Kayla, for doing a great job, and thank you for coming here tonight, and we'll move on to the next department.
And would that be purchasing and general
It would be
services?
purchasing and general services, so if Cindy Bellinger can come up. And that would be all the way up near the front. It's the tab right after the manager, I know.
The new Joyce Miller.
The
No,
new choice.
not at
No,
all.
no, she is the Cindy
original
Bellinger.
Cindy.
So I wanted Cindy to come here today, not only to do her first budget hearing, but also so that those of you who do not know her get an opportunity to meet her for the first time. So this is Cindy Bellinger. You've been here now, what, about 2 months? Oh, geez, time flies when you're having fun. 4 months.
Wow.
That's right, since October. And she replaced Joyce Miller, who was a 25-year employee who retired, and those were big shoes to fill, and I think that Cindy's doing a fantastic job in doing that. Cindy comes to us from the Somerset County Purchasing Department, where she was a QPA, a qualified purchasing agent, for about 9 years in Somerset County? About 9 years, and then in the private sector before that. So here's your microphone in case they have questions. So as you're all aware, the Purchasing and General Administration Department is really in support of all of the other departments in the town. And the budget for this year shows a $910 increase, and $800 of that is attributable to, unfortunately, copy paper. Yes, we still use a lot of paper. I know, Councilman, we still use a lot of paper as much as we try. We do use recycled paper where we can, but the cost of paper has gone up just slightly, and there's an anticipation of just a little bit of an increase in that part of the budget, but otherwise the budget has remained flat, and Cindy's department pays for things like postage for the entire town, and that copy paper is for the entire town, and the purchase orders that we use to purchase everything else in the printing department, and the like. And she also covers the copy room, all of the leases for the equipment in the township's copy room, not the individual copiers in departments, but the big machine that we use in the copy room. So, any questions for Cindy?
Councilman Chase.
I always wonder whether we couldn't do more double-sided copying.
Well, you could. Actually, what I'm trying to do to reduce the copying is I use the website to distribute things when I can, and I email everything. So that should reduce some of it, because a lot of times, instead of having people, the town print out information, all the bids and things like that, what they can do is they can download it off the web, and then that way they're using their ink, their paper. That's part of what I'm
Yeah,
implementing
very
right now.
good. I mean, that's, of course, was really a general question addressed to the manager and the entire staff. You know, looking at the rise in expenditure on.
Sure, where things can be printed both double-sided, we certainly encourage departments to do that. What Cindy's referring to is that, so now where we previously printed out all of our bid packets for them, for prospective bidders to come in and pick up, it's now available electronically to all of them, and the submissions are also made on DVD. They submit their bid submissions electronically as well, which cuts down greatly on the use of
Very
paper.
good.
Anyone else? I have one question. When Ms. Miller was there, her door to her office was warped, and she kept it that way so that when people came in, she could say, "See how little money we have? We can't even fix the door to my office. I trust you have had that door fixed." Or was it fixed by the time you got there?
Actually, she uses the other door in that office now because it, so the door that's warped is still warped and it's just closed all the time, and the other door is open. Her office has 3 doors. I'm not quite sure why, but she leaves the other door open now, so that door isn't warped.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Reminds me of the man who had 3 cats and 3 doors and said, "When I say scat, I mean scat."
The next we'll do Human Resources, Raven Williams. And I'm going through the Human Resources. Do you know where that tab is, Kathy?
Book clerk.
Oh, there it is, in order. Oh, that was by dumb luck, not by planning. The Human Resources budget shows actually a somewhat significant increase this year over last year. It shows an increase of $34,300, up from $58,620 to $92,920. The overwhelming majority of that $34,300 increase is in the education and training line. That is not for the HR department, which consists of 2 people. That is for the township's management coaching program that we implemented, I guess, about 1.5 years ago now. We did a half year in 2015. We did all of 2016. And now this will be the first full year township-wide that the management coach is working with all of the departments. And in this particular year, also stressing working with the first-line supervisors in the Public Works Department and continuing their work in the Construction Code Office. So that is the cause of the increase in Raven's budget, and I think that we've discussed that in several committees, and I don't think that comes as any surprise to council members as I presented here today.
Increase well deserved and needed.
I believe so. We're very happy with the program, and we believe it's having an impact with our employees and with our employees' interaction with the public.
Mayor?
It should make Raven's job a little bit easier, and yours.
That's my hope. We sometimes are pulling our hair out. We hope.
We'll keep
yes.
hope alive.
Mr. Vasanella.
So, yeah, from what I heard, including from you, Bob, is that it's definitely a worthwhile investment. So my question simply is it to where everybody goes through training and then that budget item remains flat except for new hirees? Or just trying to get a sense, is that going to keep going up every year, will it flatten in a couple of years?
As much as I would like to be able to give you an answer today, I don't know how long it will last. I think we'll evaluate it on a year-to-year basis and see whether it goes from the intense, usage now, the intense program that's working with different departments. So we've kind of moved it along. At some point, I would imagine that we would hope to go into more of a maintenance program.
Okay.
But we also are using it for something that we didn't anticipate using it for in the beginning, and that's some conflict resolution as well. It's been used, so the management, her name is Susie Robinson, so I'll say Susie if that's who I'm referring to. If we have issues between employees, and when you have 350 employees, it's inevitable that you will have conflict in your workforce from time to time, and it's become a very useful tool for Raven and me both to use to try to resolve some of those conflicts among peers, subordinates, supervisor, whatever the case may be. So I would like to see it into the future still here, but maybe in a different capacity as we move through all the different departments.
Oh, Councilman Chase.
I see there's a vacant position of confidential office coordinator. Is that likely to be filled?
Yes, I hope to start telephone interviews before the middle of March, and then be able to bring someone in hopefully sometime in April to fill that vacancy.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Raven. So now I'll bring up John House. John House is the Director of Fire Prevention. Mm-hmm. Okay. Got it. So this is one of the larger budgets that we have for departments in the town. John's budget is $7,796. Not 95, not rounding up to 7,800, $7,796. And it was $7,546 last year, so he added $250, and I will ask him to explain how he dares to increase this budget by $250.
The increase is due to our uniform costs. Some of our uniforms are increasing because of the demand for fire retardant materials, and that's basically what it is.
So I guess we have to put the fire prevention officers in the fire retardant clothing, so we'll have to suck that expense up. And in fairness to John, we don't run the fire prevention office solely off of this money that is budgeted in the municipal budget. There's also money that comes from a fire penalty trust that when we need to purchase larger equipment for them to do their jobs, that's where it comes from. There's things like the breathing apparatus in a fire, and in fact the fire investigation unit was paid partially with, so the equipment inside the truck itself was paid for out of fire penalty money as well. But John has done a very good job at being frugal in his operation, and it certainly is appreciated. So if any members of council have any questions of John. John also emailed you today his annual report. His annual report is to be commended. I have to go through his report and file it with the state of New Jersey, which I did, about 2 weeks ago?
Yeah,
that's part of the report, is the reporting of that. Right.
They got the statistics.
They got the
didn't get
statistics,
actual
I get the full report. It's a little dry. I don't know that you'd find it very interesting, but it was a good report. And it's the frequency of inspections are being met, we're meeting our requirements, and as such, John has not asked for any additional staff this year. And last year, John asked for a part-time employee to assist with the clerical aspects to get the inspectors out into the field, and I assume that that's worked out well, I've heard.
Yes, it is. It's helping a lot.
Any questions?
Okay,
Seeing none.
thank you, John.
Construction code.
Actually, tax assessor is next.
Oh, I need to learn to read.
A misnomer, he is the assessor, he is not the tax assessor. Correct? We have a tax collector, but we only have an assessor. He's not a tax assessor.
That's true, he isn't
We're
assessing
going by the
taxes, he's
tabs
assessing
in the
properties.
budget book.
Yes, we are, and it is, I know, and it says tax assessor. Our assessor didn't make the tab, Councilman. He would have said assessor. He doesn't assess taxes, he assesses property. Our assessor's budget shows a decrease of $13,330. This is as a result of the original budget as it was proposed was $145,120, which was a slight increase over the municipal budget of, his department budget, I should say, of 2016 at $138,450. I made a $20,000 adjustment under the professional consultant and specialized services tab after consultation with Mr. Carabelli, our assessor. We were in agreement. That tab is used primarily to do appraisals of properties, large properties that are under appeal, and we felt that based on our appeal run and the fact that our large appeals are coming to a close and the likelihood of us needing those appraisals to the extent that we had needed them in prior years was decreasing, that we could bring that budget down by $20,000, which then shows a net decrease in the budget of $13,330. There was one other increase of note, actually two. One was under education and training. We have a deputy collector that requires, deputy collector. I got tax collector in mind. Deputy assessor and field assessors that require continuing education units and as we have experienced in several years prior to this, the county tax office has paid for them, but we don't know whether or not they will pay for them. And this year, there will be an increase in the training, and we're hoping that they pay, but we still have to budget. So there was that increase. And then there's also one other increase, and I'm trying to find it here.
Other equipment and supplies.
Oh, I'm sorry. Telecommunications, line 077 had zero budgeted in 2016 and now has $1,500 budgeted in 2017. That's for cellular air cards for the tablets that our field assessors utilize in the field that will make them more efficient when they do their job. We purchased one tablet as an experiment last year. In our capital budget, there'll be two additional purchased. We bought two, and now we're buying one more, so that all the field assessors will now have them, and they'll be able to utilize the internet to access the back end and make them more productive out in the field so that they don't have to come in as often. And they also, those tablets allow them to do the assessment rather than in the written form, then putting it into the computer, it automatically puts it into the computer back at home port here. So I think that $1,500 is well spent.
Any questions from the
Yeah.
council?
Mayor?
Personnel.
Yeah, so I want us to have what we need, of course, and Mr. Carabelli have the resources under the professional consultant and specialized services. I just would like a little bit more feedback because I see last year
Oh, don't be deceived by that.
Well,
That's an
okay,
act.
okay,
so-
let me,
so it's not here.
okay, so for the,
Way off. We got the numbers in, so this number was what was reported.
Mr. Manager, let the councilman.
no,
ask his
I
question.
appreciate you know where I'm going with this, but for the sake of the rest of the council and the audience, you had budget 120, and now, I don't know if this is right, and I'm sure you'll fill us in, but I see it came back $120,000 budget last year for the professional extra services that we sometimes need. According to here, we spent $35,000, obviously a much, much less amount than budgeted, and I see how you took 20,000, but could you?
Yes, it was more like 90,000. The bills weren't in from the appraisers yet,
Okay.
and that bill is not complete, and we have until the end of this year to pay all those bills. And when we did a final assessment, that's why I said I met, and I made the adjustment to this after meeting with Mr. Carabelli, and that's because it was actually more in the neighborhood of 90. Originally, I was looking to cut 40 from it, and we adjusted it back to 20 because we found that there were outstanding bills from appraisers that hadn't been paid yet.
It all makes sense. You can see why I.
No, absolutely, that's right, I was nodding my head, you're absolutely
I
right.
appreciate you reading, knowing where I'm going with it, but
Yeah.
again, for the sake of the other people here, so that sounds fine to me. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Carabelli. Thank you. Next up will be Construction Code, Mr. Lupo.
Wait,
Whoop. Mr. Carabelli?
They weren't there yesterday? They weren't there yesterday?
fortunately, your mic isn't on, so no one heard that. Yes, Mr. Lupo, welcome.
It's UCC, it's 5 tabs forward from where we just were with assessor. So Mr. Lupo's budget is this is one of 2 budgets that Mr. Lupo does. There's the budget that he does for us, for the municipal government, and then there's the budget that he also does for the Department of Community Affairs in Trenton, which that budget, if you were to look at, you'd say, wow. It includes a whole lot more than what we include in this budget here. It includes every aspect of the cost of running a uniform construction code office, to include things like rent on the portion of the building that he occupies. If it were to be a standalone operation, separate and apart from municipal government, it would be upwards of what, about $1.5 million, right? But $2.5 million. $2.5 million. Yeah, but so that would be every aspect that, utilities and all those other things. His municipal budget, on the other hand, is $350,900, which is a $700 increase over last year. This includes a large, decrease, $350,900 down from a $351,616. So a $700 decrease. This continues to include $180,000 annually for the document imaging program, and so that's a big portion of Mr. Lupo's budget. And this is a budget which falls as a percentage of our collection of construction permit fees that we need to continue as far as Mr. Lupo's municipal budget and how they impact fees. So, are there any questions about Mr. Lupo's budget?
Where's the document imaging?
It would be under the one where it says telecommunication, fax, email, internet. It's $180,000. This year it'll be this year it'll be a new contract with a different vendor. Anne-Marie, it's
General code?
General Code, which is the one who does our code books as well. It's for the whole town, yes. The bulk of our document imaging is generated out of Mr. Lupo's office. You can imagine if how many permits did we do in 16?
We did 4,770 permits this year.
So every piece of paper that's associated with every one of those permit applications, including the large plans, the construction plans, are subject to retention, and therefore we now can digitize them, and that's what this program is all about. And so that now that we've run out of places to put things, which we have, and I think that Anne Marie told me how many boxes are coming back from that for storage for Mr. Lupo's office.
Between 600 and 800.
Between 600 and 800 boxes. Now we can get rid of some of that, but that's the volume of things that are getting digitized. It's a pretty big project.
Never be done.
It'll never be, no, it won't ever be done because we generate more and more and more. What's nice is that in certain circumstances now, we are allowed to request that they be submitted in electronic form so that we don't have the paper to begin with. And that's really where the future is. And now that the state has permitted engineers to seal plans electronically.
Engineers, we're still waiting for architects, we're still waiting for the plumbers and the electricians to be allowed to digitize their signatures. Once that happens, we can cut our paperwork immensely. We have a huge budget right now for paperwork.
Yep.
Mayor had a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Vasanelli.
Okay, the 027 and 028, where you have line items for legal services and professional consultants and specialized services, I see 2014, 2015, 2016, we budgeted anywhere for the two of those lines, anywhere from 81,000 to 100,000, but basically the last 3 years pretty much used absolutely nothing of that. So I'm not saying we don't need it, but I would like you to elaborate on, and maybe I missed this here, but on the 40,000 and the 80,000 again you're proposing for those two lines. And why would we be using it now? We haven't used it the last 3 years?
It's there as a contingency in the event that it's needed. If we receive lawsuits against, like as we did with the Pulte matter, we have the money in the budget. And again, this is a percentage of the big budget, Councilman, and I guess
Is that by statute, the percentage?
We have to budget for emergency contingencies. We've been lucky for the past 4 years. We haven't had to use it. 5 years ago, we used a huge percentage of that when we were for council when we were working with Pulte.
Sure.
We don't know what's going to happen this year, if anything happens at all. Hopefully, knock on wood, nothing will. In which case, that money will just go back into the general fund. But it has to be set aside.
And the other portion of it is things like in the event that there's an emergency where we have to do a tear down of a building, that's what that money is there for.
Okay, no, that's
the reasons why it's there.
Tear down, okay. That fit into that. Thank you, that's all.
Anyone else? Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Time for stars and bars.
Stars and bars, here they come. I believe it's Deputy Chief Grammer, Captain Borland, and Lieutenant Durham. Their clothing gives them away as to where they come from. The police department has several tabs. The first one is a couple tabs away from where we just were in construction code. We'll start with the police tab first. As soon as I get to the... So, the 2017 budget, and I'm going to direct you to the line that says total other expenses. There's some additional calculations underneath that really are not relevant to what we're talking about right now. These are just to do some side-by-side comparisons from 16 to 17. But the line that I'm going to reference right now is total other expenses. And the total other expenses for 2017 for the police budget is $392,825. The budget for 16 was $430,702, showing a decrease of $37,877. Now I'll just flip you down one line lower, and it says less vehicle. In 2016, we budgeted for a car. Now, actually, two cars. Cars, not SUVs, but cars are not capital purchases, and there were two cars purchased in the police budget last year, and that accounts for obviously, where there would have been a minor increase in the police budget if there had been 2 cars budgeted again this year, but there were not. There are no cars budgeted in the police budget this year. So while the overall budget shows a decrease, it's attributed to primarily the fact that those 2 cars were removed from the 2017 budget and included in the 2016 budget. Otherwise, there has been some movement of money in the overall budget for the police department. The most notable decrease being, you'll see there's a manager's adjustment under the education and training line, brought down from 124.8 that was requested to 114.8 for a, and it's actually, it says 124.8, but it was 125, not 124.8. That's a mistake. It mirrored what was budgeted last year at 125. And so that line in the budget is used to pay contractual tuition reimbursements to police officers who are continuing their education. And we can decrease that, and you can see that there was a decrease in expenditures in that budget, and Lieutenant Durham and I spoke about this when she was preparing the police department's budget. This isn't because we don't have officers who are interested in their education. It's because we have officers who are educated. And they're no longer in need of the tuition reimbursements because they have reached their goals of receiving their degrees, and our officers that we're hiring more often have advanced degrees, so there's no reason for as much money to be budgeted for tuition reimbursements that there had been in the past. So it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. It's not that there's a lack of interest, it's just that they now have their degrees. So we pay for it in a different part of the budget where we now pay them for having their college degrees. So we save a little bit money on that end. But so that's really the police department in a nutshell. There are other budgets we'll talk about after this one, but if you have any questions for the lady and gentleman that are up here, they're here to answer your questions.
No, I had a question for you, Mr. Township Manager. Under 077 telecommunications, fax, email, and internet?
Yes.
That's going to pop up somewhere else for them?
No.
Or, no?
No. You're thinking about their air cards and things like that, their cellular phones and all that. Now, if you go up one line above that, telephone charges, that's what that line is. If you had this, so the $45,000 for the cellular connection for all the mobile computers in the patrol cars, and that's the Verizon bill right there in a nutshell, $45,000. That also covers all of the other cell phones in the township as well. There's very little budgeted in department budgets for cell phones that are held by.
Everything is going through the.
Yeah, they hold the account. There's appropriations in water, but that's because we appropriate things to water where we can.
But that $500 for the telecommunications.
It's to fix fax machines in their building.
Done?
Yeah.
Done?
It's an amount of money in case a fax machine breaks. They cost about $250. We budget for 2 of them every year.
Done? We're good.
I see software licensing has gone up, as it does.
That's it. And I think the biggest one is the records and records management and CAD system, and that's shows a minor increase this year, right? Yeah.
Anyone else? Next.
Next is the next tab, which is the 911 tab. So that's the dispatch tab. This budget's pretty straightforward. It's budgeted at $196,050, which is a $12,100 increase over the $183,950 budgeted last year. And you see that the $12,100 is all attributed to the first line, which is maintenance and repair of other equipment. This is taken up almost exclusively by the contract with Motorola for the maintenance of the township-wide radio system. We talked a little bit about that radio system in the capital at our last meeting. As we know that contract is, after this year, we can't renew it. Yeah, that's the one that we have to do the capital project for, so we can continue to maintain our radio system.
That's what you were calling end of life.
That's what I was calling end of life, and it was end of life December 31st of 2016, and Motorola, out of the goodness of their heart, continued our maintenance contract for one more year to give us an opportunity to upgrade our equipment.
Questions?
Okay. The next tab in line is emergency management. This budget includes the salary and wage for our part-time emergency management coordinator, Gary Howarth. You see the total budget is $15,834. When you back out his $13,584, you're left with a very small amount. It's $1,500 in equipment repair and maintenance, $250 for education and training, and $500 for uniform allowance. We have a part-time emergency management coordinator, but we have a full-time emergency management operation, and this is just a small budget in the event that we have an emergency to get the things that we would need to operate through that emergency. And that money we put in years ago when I did the emergency management budget and the police department budgets, just so that there was some money there to allow for things that, the basics of running an emergency in the operations center. And I believe, and I don't remember exactly how much, but there's a portion of that $13,584 for salary that's offset by a grant every year. It used to be a $5,000 grant. I think it's offset completely by the grant this year, so that's coming out of the federal government. So Mr. Howard's salary is completely offset by the grant now.
Questions? No political comments.
And one more for the police department, animal control. The mayor promised me that this one was going to take a half an hour. Let's see what we can do.
Whatever it is, double it.
Animal control shows actually, on a percentage basis, a fairly significant increase. It was increased from $22,960 in 2016 to $30,340,000 in 2017, for an increase of $7,380. And you'll see that $7,000 of that $7,380 is on line 028, which is professional consultant and specialized services. Needless to say, in animal control operation, that is our veterinary bills. And given the fact that we have a large number of animals to treat and care for, and we had to rely on shuffling of money and doing things last year to accommodate for the vet bills that are never ending. And I would tell council this: that amount of money that is budgeted here for vet bills is only the tip of the iceberg on what is actually paid to veterinarians for animals in our shelter. A large portion of our veterinary bills are paid for by the two nonprofit organizations, Angel Tales and Second Chance for Animals, that sponsor many fundraisers to raise money to offset the costs of that shelter. And without those nonprofits, this budget would be at a 2 in front of that 3, and that would be a much more accurate budget for our animal shelter. It would probably be about $250,000. We don't pay for food. We don't pay for cat litter. We don't pay for people to come walk the animals every day. I have one volunteer right here to my left who's out there in the courtyard walking those dogs every day on her lunch break. And it is because of those volunteer organizations that we're able to keep those expenses at what they're at.
I would just like to chip in. That's where I take my daughter's rabbit to, the veterinarian, and it's not a lot of money.
No,
Not a lot of money at all.
and we have the trailer that's a concession contract. The veterinarian who occupies that trailer on Tuesdays is there to do low-cost spay and neuter, does that for us as well, and that's been a big help to the shelter in keeping those veterinary costs down for the normal routine functions of a veterinarian. The bigger costs are when we have a moral obligation to care for animals who are sick or injured that we recover, that are either have been abandoned or unclaimed, and we do have an obligation to maintain their health, and if they're hurt, hit by a car, whatever it is, we have to cover those expenses, and that's the cause for the increase.
Great. Any other questions?
Okay, any other questions of the police department as a whole as related to their budgets? Thank you.
Thank you.
The rough life that he has.
Patrolling, no doubt.
Yes, he's patrolling the ship. Okay, the next is our municipal clerk. Would you like to handle your budget from up there, or would you like to come down here?
I could do it up here.
You could do it up here?
Very good.
Towards the front, right? Clerk. We actually we'll have some discussion here. We can, so we have some, that's okay. We have some discussion with our clerk today. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to let your, Anne Marie, talk to you first about a request to move a part-time position into full-time status that was discussed at some committees, but I'll let her talk about her need for that part-time position to become full-time. Now, you may speak about that.
Okay, so I'm requesting that our part-time position be made full-time because we've had a huge increase in OPA requests. We do over 1,000 a year. And they take anywhere, once they took 20 to 25 hours a week, and it's taking just more time. One day, if we were ever totally digital, it would take seconds instead of, hours or days for one request. But we're not getting to there in my tenure here anyway. I also need help scanning my stuff. We've got cabinets and cabinets of things that can be scanned and then either off-site or destroyed, and I just can't get to it as much as I have been because we're just extremely busy. And that's what this person would be utilized for. We had a part-time person from November until recently. And it didn't really make too much of an impact because we just get busier every day and we just need more help. And any questions?
I understand Jenny Woodbury is likely to retire.
Yes, but she never did, well, she used to do Oprah, but when she was here last, that was not part of her duties. She didn't do the Oprah and she didn't do any of the scanning. So that has no basis. What Ginny did is now, she was predominantly licensing, which I've taken over since she's been out, and my 2 staff members have been taking the phone calls and doing the counter work that she used to do.
I was just implying that
Yeah.
you even more need
Yes,
this
well-
to be a full-time position.
Is it your plan to replace that position?
Ginny's?
Yeah, if she should not come back.
Should she not come back, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Because it has to be someone that can be me when I'm not here, and that was Ginny. Ginny's the deputy clerk. And so right now, if I'm not here, there isn't anybody else. That's why I was here last week sick, Try not to get anybody else full of germs.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the clerk?
Okay, now moving on to the OE budget. So,
So, is this, did that also cover elections in Township Council and were you covering all of that?
Yeah, we haven't done the operating part. I mean, I can,
that's right, yeah, that was just for.
that was just the request for
Right.
making the half-time person full-time.
The first budget on my packet under the clerk is mayor and council budget. And that budget shows a $500,000 increase for pay.
That's somebody's.
Each. No, I'm sorry, yes, each. So a $4.5 million increase for council, mayor, no, actually shows a $220 decrease. We're cutting your budget. Your budget is down $220 from $24,014 to $23,794. This is one of those funny budgets that some of these things are an exact number. That's why the odd number not rounded. But this is to pay for all of those things that you cost us for. All of your training and education programs and the publications that you receive.
And why are we costing $220 less?
Because you're worth $220 less than you were last year. Anne Marie adjusted it. Anne Marie, what went down $220? Professional association and dues went down $220. So I guess there's
Yes.
something that you don't, that got decreased for all of your dues somewhere along the line in all of the things that are in that line for association dues.
What actually do we do for $100 for education and training?
Well, you didn't do anything, if you notice.
I notice.
We put that in there, I guess, Anne Marie.
And that's in case anybody wants to go to a league seminar or
That costs money.
that monthly Somerset County governing officials thing that, in the past, we've had some council people go.
So if any of you are interested in attending one of those seminars, jump on it while the money's there.
Didn't know we
is what
had
I would
such a
say.
vast budget.
That's part of, for the public, that's part of the problem with budgeting, the budgeting laws. Since you can't move things between budgets easily, you have to budget for some things that
Sometimes don't get
always-
spent. Yes, that's correct. And that's the case where if a council member wanted to go to one of those seminars between January 1st and November 1st, they wouldn't be able to go. And if we didn't have that money in there, we can't move money until after November 1st within a department budget. So that's why. If you flip, the next one is clerk. They're all under that same tab. This is the general clerk budget. Anne Marie, I'm not quite sure how in the world this happens, but so the budget proposed for 2017 is $40,460, down from $40,494, a whopping decrease of $34. Anne Marie, and that's with some changes, as you see. There's some movement of funds to allow for more accurate budgeting for spending within the department. Anne Marie, how'd you save $34?
Oh, like you said, we did adjustments, and when I did adjustments looking, it came out to $34 less.
Moving on.
There you go. Anne Marie, you have another one in this one?
I have the elections, and that's the only one that goes up. It goes up $5,000. And that's because this year is a ward election year. We have 5 separate ballots, and I don't know how much the sample ballots cost until after the election. And it's based on registered voters, and we've gone up 10,000 registered voters in the last year, so one never knows.
Councilwoman, do you have a question? Okay, sorry, I thought you had a question. Okay. Okay, so elections going up 5,000. Any questions from council?
$5,000 up on the elections budget.
Yeah, I said 10,000 increase in voters.
Voters, 10,000 registered voters increased. Mm-hmm.
50 cents a voter.
Presidential elections will do that. They'll get people to come register. That's to get out to vote. I believe some members up there were involved in that Get Out to Vote initiative.
Any other questions for the clerk?
Okay. So the next tab after clerk is finance, so let's do that.
Actually, before that, I have a question for Councilman Vasanella, since I think he would likely know this. Do you recall when the last time council got a raise?
10 years ago.
10 years. So, and they were not getting a raise this time, so I just thought, while the manager was joking about it, I thought it was a point to make. It's been 10 years. Go on, Mr. Manager.
Okay.
Mr. Vasanella, I knew you would know because he's the longest serving on council right now.
Finance. Kathleen Moody, our Chief Financial Officer, will talk about her budget, which has not gone up 1 cent. It was $324,316 last year, and it's $324,316 this year. And the overwhelming majority of that budget is $316,375 of the 324 is our financial consultant, which, as all of you know, provides the 3 staff members that work in Kathy's office, payroll supervisor, accounts receivable payable, and treasurer. And then that also, checking to see if he's here yet. That also includes the financial advisor, Andy Hodgelick, whose firm provides those staff members. I'm sorry.
Waiting on Andy to come
He
tonight?
is coming here tonight to talk about the very last thing, revenues, with me.
Any questions?
That doesn't include his contract.
That is his contract. That's his whole contract, $316,375. And plus there's a portion that comes up for him, comes out of the water utility budget as well. So it's a little bit more than 316.
So for the public, our finance office is staffed by contract. That gives us a lot of flexibility. We're not dealing with the contracts of a union. It's a contract with a contractor, and that's a whole different set of rules. So that's why that bill is so high.
I see there's actually a decrease in what goes to Andy's
I
operation.
think it's a little bit of an adjustment with the water utility. And there's a small portion of that amount that also goes to pay for grant administration still, correct? Yes, there's 30,000, I think it is, right? $30,000 for grant administration work that Mr. Hodgelick's firm does for us as well. Okay. Next one is Planning, Zoning, Environmental Commission, Historic Preservation Advisory Commission. We'll start with Planning, and I'm going to find it here. Planning and Zoning, a couple tabs. It's actually the beginning tab all the way over to the right. So some of these budgets I will be giving to you, and I feel comfortable, having met with all of the department heads, that I can get through some of these budgets without the department heads. Some had conflicts in schedule today. Some are at other meetings. If there's some questions that council have about these particular budgets that I can't answer, I will certainly get answers for you for the meeting on the 28th. The first budget is the planning board budget. That budget is proposed at $85,800. That's another one that we just adjusted for practical matters here, reduced at $29, down from $85,829. $50,000 of this budget is to pay for both the planning board and board of adjustment attorneys, $25,000 apiece are budgeted for those attorneys that represent those boards. And there's also a $30,000 line under 028, which you will see shows as unexpended, in calendar year 2016. This was done on 9/30/16. That's actually was expended. That money was utilized to fund the second portion of the Economic Development Strategic Plan, which was the review of the process involved in development. That's where we took that money from. That was originally budgeted by Mr. Healy, our planner, for the purposes of hiring a transportation expert to complete the transportation element of our master plan update. We didn't spend it in 2016. We instead spent it on that economic development initiative, and it's budgeted again in 2017, this time for that transportation element of the master plan that both Mr. Healy and I felt was a necessary for us to bring in an expert for that particular portion of the master plan, which is being handled in-house by Mr. Healy, which is a pretty heavy lift to begin with. So ordinarily we would have that go out to a professional planning firm, and we handled it in-house. Mr. Healy certainly is capable, but it is a lot of work, and that's a particularly important part of our master plan this time around. So that was budgeted last year, and we're budgeting again this year. So as you can see, when you take out that 80,000, 50,000 for attorneys and 30,000 for the transportation element of the master plan, it leaves a $5,800 budget, which is relatively small in the grand scheme here. So, if there are questions about planning board? Okay. The next one we will go to is under commissions. It's two full sets of tabs going backwards or forwards? This way. Oh, back towards the end. Okay. I'm getting there.
$1,200.
$1,200 for environmental commission. Oh, I got it. Here we go. The bulk of the environmental commission budget it's all under 029, which is annual membership in their Associated New Jersey Environmental Commission, and there was an additional $875 included in the budget, and that is for any training or presentations that the Environmental Commission wanted to hold this year. And I defer to Councilman Chase, who's on the Environmental Commission, if he could add anything more.
I'm council liaison.
You are council liaison.
One thing the commission often spends money on but hasn't in the past year or two is just plaques to award to, I forget exactly what we call them, but people who've done good things environmentally, one for an organization and one for an individual. And I'm not sure whether we're going to have anybody this year. I don't think we did last year.
Councilman Vasanella suggested stewards, and that might be a good term for people who do good things for the environment.
Tree huggers, which I say with affection. Nothing. Go
Well, I
ahead.
said I believed environmental stewards is what we had called them. in the past.
Stewardship, right, yeah, environmental stewardship, yeah. And,
Okay. So if there are no other questions about environmental, the Historic Preservation Commission budget is budgeted at $2,899. I know that sounds like a silly number, but again, these are just the math for the members for their various, the membership in organizations related to historic preservation that our members are members of. And as you know, our Historic Preservation Commission is a quasi-judicial board, and they're about to, and I'm going to defer again to Councilman Chase, they're about to be elevated in stature, so to speak, and have a little bit more judicial authority. And if you could just explain.
Well, actually, while they pass on applications for exterior renovation and such like in historic districts, technically what they're doing is usually a recommendation to the planning board or the zoning board. Sometimes it's standalone. They have, for about 3 years, we've been applying for certified local government status, which then allows the Historic Commission to pass on more things, particularly on things the township does with historic buildings that up to now we've had to send to the State Historic Preservation Office for approval. If we attain certified local government status, our commission will be able to do that. However, as I say, this has been going on for a good 3 years, so was that an indication of 5 years?
I thought it was 5.
Yeah, it's certainly been recommended for 5 years. We did our initial submission, and their comments didn't come back for 2.5 years. And we introduced an ordinance change last week in response to one of the suggestions from the State Historic Preservation Office, and I can't guarantee that there won't be another suggestion, so.
And there may be. And that was an ordinance that was just on the agenda last week.
Yeah, and the commission does have requirements for ongoing training for its members. They generally figure out the least expensive ways for doing this, but we still have to budget some for their training.
Their total budget is $2,890.
28, yeah, exactly. The next one I have for you,
Thank you.
if there's no other questions, is Shade Tree. I believe that's the smallest budget that we have. The Shade Tree Commission's budget is $250. It's for membership in the State Shade Tree Commission Club. I couldn't even, and I appoint the Shade Tree Commission members. I should know that. But next.
And they are going to run a survey of dangerous trees and ash trees along township roads, but they got a grant for that.
That will be important, or is important, but we will be seeing how important the ash tree issue is going to be.
I just keep saying that the ash trees aren't going to die quite as fast as you seem to fear, unless a mayoral glance kills an ash tree at a single glance.
Okay, so moving on, the next budget is community resources, often referred to as social services. This budget is proposed in 2017 to match the 2016 budget with no increase at $14,821. This is the budget that administers the municipal welfare program through the state. This is solely for adults, single adults without children. The county administers the welfare program for families and children. It also provides for summer programs for some of our at-risk youth. It also provides for, so there's camps, there's daycare programs, and there's also employment opportunities for youth through the Community Resources Office through the summer. And it also provides for counseling services and emergency housing should it be needed. Good. So, are there any questions about community resources?
Seeing none.
Okay. Next would be tax collector. This way. Going towards the front of the book, 2 full tabs. Oh, right where look at, I picked the right one. Hit it exactly. I think that this department is pretty self-explanatory. This is not only the department that collects our taxes, but also the one who collects our water bills, and also is the one who, when we have property owners that do not pay their taxes or do not pay their water bills, they are also the ones who assess liens against properties for non-payment of those items. This budget is at $10,347, which shows an increase of $417. And that's under the printing and binding line is $517 increase. Printing and binding is, needless to say, the tax bills, and we have more properties receiving tax bills, so therefore we have to budget more to print the tax bills out. So that's a pretty easy movement in the math there. The one thing I brought to the mayor's attention today, earlier, that I'll bring to council's attention is, I guess about a year ago now, this council adopted an ordinance to require lending institutions who come into possession of houses through foreclosure to register those properties with the township and pay a registration fee that has an escalation clause in it. That longer that they hold those properties without disposing of them, the fees increase. And it also requires them to provide us with who maintains those properties, names and contact numbers. That registration falls in January, and the registration fees collected in the month of January totaled $65,500. That unfortunately is a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing that it creates that revenue for us, but it's a bad thing indicating that there are that many houses that are currently bank-owned in foreclosure. So as much as I very much would love to hear that number is zero, because that means that we have none, and that's, I guess, maybe a dream, but hopefully we'll see that number go down. But in the meantime, that money that is collected for those registration fees will help us as we also, unfortunately, sometimes to have to maintain these properties ourselves and place liens against the properties until such time as the property is sold, when there is no responsible party. So, if there are no questions about tax collector budget,
Seeing none.
I will move on to economic development. 4 tabs, yep, there. So economic development. So economic development is flat from last year at $143,175. The bulk of that budget was in the professional consultant and specialized services line, and that was the money that we used to fund our economic development strategic plan study. And through several meetings we've all had prior to this meeting today, we've had a discussion about how the township is making a commitment towards economic development, and we anticipate that economic development plan to be completed hopefully in the first quarter of 2017, and as we were told by our consultant who was doing the plan. And then we'll have to implement it, which means we'll have to have a budget for the office that will implement it, and that budget will be here in the economic development lines, and that is where that money is being allocated towards our economic development initiative. There's also $30,000 in this budget that is the township's contribution to the redevelopment agency. And so and then there's also money in here for our membership in the Somerset Business Partnership, which is the county's economic development wing. So that's our economic development budget, and we'll talk a little bit more about economic development when we get to my budget next.
I see you've included and added 2,500 for conferences and meetings.
I have. It's taken out of the original $110,000 that was budgeted in 028, and I moved it into conferences and meetings in anticipation of our economic development department, which we'll talk about in the next budget, having conferences and attending conferences and meetings and the like to further our economic development initiatives.
Oh, I was wondering if it would pay for Councilwoman Sherman and me to attend the Plan Smart New Jersey.
It sure will. Those are the functions of it, but it's for economic development purposes, and so this is for those types of things.
So I think we got a few good ideas out of that last year.
So just in general, when there is those budgets in these particular areas like this, and obviously not often, but when a council person should or could be involved in a conference like that relevant to the economic development in this case. It would come out of
As
there.
you said, yes.
It would come out of there.
Rather than,
as opposed to
in
the
all
council.
likelihood, it would come out of here rather than that, obviously, your budget and your mayor and council budget is very small.
So I know we're doing a lot,
Yes.
what's transport, or whatever it is, you tie it to the other. Got it.
Correct.
All right.
Okay. All right. Next budget is Township Manager, which is all the way up in the front. So before I go into the operating budget for the manager's office, I'd like to talk about the salary budget. On the salary budget sheet, there are, has nothing to do with mine. The salary budget sheet includes 2 new positions. These positions have been discussed at the committee level. One is for an economic development business advocate to implement our economic development initiative. And one is for a public information coordinator, and that is someone who would work not only with the Economic Development Office, but also work to put out a part-time position for our newsletter and our social media coordinator. These are things that I think we've reached a point where it's no longer practical to have a full-time staff member who has a full-time job trying to handle the issuance of our quarterly newsletter. There's talk about cooperating with the Board of Education to perhaps make it a joint effort. And then there's the never-ending social media involvement, and I think the time has come and that we do have someone as a central point person to work with me and with the IT department and all the other departments to get those things out, but also to work with our economic development coordinator once we have that position filled, to get the word out on that front and involve not only the newsletter but really social media and our media outlets to.
With all that explanation, it sounds like maybe we should appropriate more.
Well, I think that, like anything, when this is something new, and as much as I would love to have a full-time position, I think that we can work with this. I have good staff members who are very creative. The Recreation Department has really stepped up in the absence of Joyce Miller with the newsletter. I think they're doing a fantastic job, but everybody's limited on time. Yeah. And so I think that in this particular case, if we are met with great success with a part-time position and we look to expand it and we want to go to a full-time position, we could certainly do that next year. But I'd rather start small and see where we go with that. But I do think that we need to make the commitment, and I know we've met with the Economic Development Committee, the Administration Committee, and Financial Oversight Committee as far as the Economic Development Coordinator and Business Advocate. It's a necessary thing. We're making this huge investment in the town as far as economic development is concerned, and we need to have a point person who's going to take that plan and run with it, and that's what this position is for.
What was the name of that position? I'm sorry.
It's called Economic Development / Business Advocate. It's under, you'll see it's like the 4th line down on the salary page and under my tab.
I do have one question. How did you come up with that salary number? It's an odd.
It was discussed at Financial Oversight.
Is that a marketplace research issue, or somebody knows that that's what that position requires?
Which position are you speaking
The
of?
advocate position, the salary?
The $90,000?
91.
No, that's a total. If you look, there's a management stipend in that. It's $90,000.
Okay, but let me go back, whether it's $1,800 more or not. How did that, was it determined that 90,000 is the right number? Was there a market?
Because I looked at different towns that have people in those positions, and that's a competitive salary for that particular position.
All right, that's what I was asking.
Yes.
Okay.
It wasn't just, and again, it was vetted through Financial Oversight as we went through the budget process as a recommended salary for that particular position.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to make sure it was adequate or not excessive. I just wanted to make sure.
No, I think it's
I know you
competitive.
do your research.
I do.
But
It's competitive with towns that have similar positions.
Thank you.
So just real quick follow-up on those two, to make sure I'm understanding. So the part-time PI, Public Information Office, or I guess is what they would be.
Yes.
And I've always thought we've needed to have one forever in this town, part-time, at least part-time. Fortunately, Joyce Miller and others kind of pitched in. But this is what I'm trying to understand. I think it's good, is the idea that you already have most of these department heads in different areas of the town that do a lot of their own PR communication, but especially without Joyce, and just because of the volume of it, we need someone that kind of is the nucleus and to help.
The wrangler is what I would call it.
That's a good word.
That's what I would call it.
And
someone who needs to put it all together.
Got it.
Exactly.
And would help with everything we have now, besides anything with economic development.
As you can imagine, we'll talk about the newsletter for a second. The newsletter gathers articles and ideas from all of the different departments, and Joyce used to be the person who was chasing them down forever for information to include. Now, you also have to remember that Joyce Miller's background, prior to her being employed here, was she worked for the Somerset Spectator. She was a newspaper reporter. That was her job before she got hired here, all right? So she had a background, and she had a love and an interest in the newsletter. It was something that kept her interest all the time. And I'm not saying that I don't have staff members who are interested, but the truth is that I'm relying on program coordinators for the recreation department to do the newsletter. They have a job. And that's really what it comes down to. And everybody's pressed for their own time, for their own positions. And I appreciate you saying what you said, Councilman. You're absolutely right. It's a vital thing for us to have. We do a lot of good things, and I often hear, that, well, what do you do, or when do you do it, or how do you do it? Well, we don't get the word out as well as we should get it out sometimes, and that's what this position's job will be.
I'm fine with that. But I'm going to go back to what Councilwoman Sherman. Not saying we don't need the economic development position, I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but have we explored, and 90,000 for a really highly qualified, experienced person probably is reasonable, and I trust your research. But do we need a full-time person now before we've even, we've gone from zero to, we've gone from never having anybody, and I thought we should have, quite honestly, had part-time years back, but we've gone from nobody to the major study to, we still won't be implementing these things till next year, so is
No, I disagree. We'll be implementing this year. March of this year is when we're supposed to have this completion.
Later this year, but I'm saying, do we need, there's people sometimes, my understanding is they'll go out and they'll provide these types of services to maybe a few towns or a few entities and
I would disagree with that statement. I'll answer your question. I think that this town has done things on the cheap for so long, and when it comes to this, and it's time that we do what we are supposed to be doing, which is promote the economy of this town and the growth of this town. And you need to have someone who's doing this on a daily basis. This can't be part-time. This can't be half-time. This needs to be full-time all the time. Someone who will advocate. I will tell you that I hear the pleas of council people, of builders, of developers, that they get different information, different direction. They don't know what to do. They're unhappy with the services that are being provided. This needs to be done. I have advocated for this position, and I use that word, and business advocate. This was part of my presentation to many of you when I applied for this job. This is a long time coming, and this town has had full-time economic development coordinators in the past, but I don't think to have a full-time economic development coordinator without an economic development plan is kind of pointless. And that's what was done in the past. And I think that we are finally on the right track, and we are finally doing it the way it should be done, which is develop a comprehensive plan and then implement the plan. Mm-hmm. And to do it without a full-time staff member whose sole function is to do this is, I think, doing a disservice to the town, and it's a disservice to the plan that's being developed. I truly believe that, and I advocated for it through all of the different committees that this was relevant to, and I firmly believe that it's necessary. And I think that as we work through this budget process, I think that you'll see that we have made sacrifices where we can make sacrifices. We have made cuts where we could make cuts. We've held spending where we could hold spending. And I think the time has come, and this is the time now. And this is why we went through this process that began back in the summer of last year, and where we're finally coming to fruition. And this is not a plan that's for a year or 2 years or 5 years. This is a plan that's for the next 25 years of growth of this town. And you can't just say, okay, let me get someone who's on staff already to handle it in their spare time. It needs to be a full-time position.
You've justified it. I wasn't suggesting, I was just throwing it out there to hear a little more about it.
And I'm saying it with a smile on my face, and I don't mind being challenged on this one, because to be honest with you, I feel probably more passionate about this than I've felt about anything since I become township manager. This is something that I am very proud of, and I think that all of council should be proud of it, and it's something that its time has come.
So the only thing I'll ask, they'll also, of course, be helping with the efforts on Hamilton Street.
Absolutely.
Obviously increasing
without a doubt.
every day. Okay.
Without a doubt.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so now we can move on to my whopping budget here.
And, one thing you didn't say, it was recommended by the Economic Development
It was,
Committee,
absolutely.
The Finance Oversight Committee.
Admin, Economic Development, and
Admin,
Finance.
right,
It
so it
absolutely
has been
was.
totally
It's been
vetted.
vetted through 3 different committees.
Without it, the whole plan that we've done would be worthless.
Exactly. We're putting our money where our mouth is.
Exactly.
So, moving to my Township Manager General Administration budget, my budget, I don't know how it went up $150. I'm not quite sure why it went up $150. I will tell you that there's been some movement in my budget to $21 here, $179 there. But the bulk of my budget is the $240,000 out of that $282,000 is for contingency in the manager's budget in the event of an emergency. God forbid, a natural catastrophe where we need to have money budgeted to spend on a short notice without making an emergency appropriation. That money is budgeted here in the township manager's budget and is in a miscellaneous line only to be used for emergency or as a contingency and emergency purposes.
I would just like to add, roughly 10 years ago, each department had its own contingency budget.
They did.
And Ken Daly consolidated them and then was able to reduce that by a significant number. So while 240 sounds like a lot of money, it's really a savings from what we used to do. I don't think it's gone up.
No, it's actually gone down. It used to be $280,000, and I brought it down back in 2013 to $240, and we've kept it at $240 since then. And as you can see, in 2016, there was $304.99. And I will tell you, I know what that $304.99 was for. We took all of our hotel general managers on a tour of Franklin Township and all of those things that they could show all of their customers who were staying in hotels. And when we did that, we fed them. And that was the $304.99. Which was not budgeted anywhere else. Now it would be budgeted in economic development in that $2,500 line for meetings and conferences.
I see the very accurate spending on maintenance of other equipment in the last year.
That'd be my copy machine. So it's a contract, so it's an exact number.
No, there's 12 cents.
There's 12 cents that I left on the table, I know, so. And the other thing we talk about, Ken Daly, give credit where credit is due, is under the office supply line, which was centralized back under Ken Daly's term as township manager. And you see that number actually would increase. This is the third quarter. There's a little bit more than the $17,425 that was spent. That's township-wide office supplies. I can tell you that budget of $38,000 for 2017 is less than what we used to budget in the police department alone when I worked in the police department. It was a $40,000 budget to last year that we budgeted independently for office supplies. So clearly, waste has been cut out tremendously. And when you have someone with and it's not me, it's the person who sits outside my office who goes through each of these individual office supply orders with a fine-tooth comb, it helps. So that's the manager budget. And then we have all other, unless you have any questions about the manager budget, other than the 12 cents I left on the table there. The last section is all other lines and then revenues. All other lines. We didn't cover any of them at other times? We did cover utilities. We did utilities and insurance when we met the last time. So I'm trying to think of what other. So the legal, we could talk about legal. That is, okay, right after assessor comes legal. Legal services are the two attorneys other than planning and zoning and prosecutors. These are our township attorney and our tax appeal attorney. Both are being budgeted at the same amount that they were budgeted at last year, with no increase in hourly rate or increase in not to exceeds. It is $235,000 being budgeted for tax appeal attorney and $300,000 for township attorney, which is the same as last year.
What happens if someone sues us very expensively? I mean, like we have to take something to the Supreme Court.
Well, I mean, so if someone sues us, depending on the type of lawsuit, would depend on which insurance company would be footing most of the legal fees for a lawsuit. We have, through the JIF, there's different types of liability insurance that covers us. There's personal, professional liability, so as if one of you were sued by someone for some reason and needed to be defended, that's the professional insurance. Obviously, liability if the township, and then there's, so most of the legal fees would be covered by insurance.
I guess I was thinking more if someone disagrees with one of our ordinances.
Yes, in that case, then if council chooses to pursue that in court, and in defending the ordinance and taking it through the courts, then it would be our township attorney that we would be paying for that legal work. And certainly that's factored in to all that we do. I know that our township attorney defends us. In fact, just recently defended us on a zoning board appeal that went to the appellate division and was just reversed by the appellate division, and so in favor of the township. Dunbar Homes, the Dunbar Homes case was just overturned by the appellate division, and Mr. Raynone was our attorney of record for that particular matter, and it's just included in his bills. And if it exceeded that 300,000, Councilman, that's why we have 240,000 in my budget.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's really what I was asking about, was what if we have...
That's one of those contingencies.
Yeah.
As we're moving out, I would just like to point out to the manager and Mr. Chase that without the three of us at open space, they got out about 25 minutes early.
That's because without us, it's no fun. Okay.
We'll poll them next month.
To see if that's true. Then we have volunteer organizations. This is insurance and surety bonds and aid to fire district for our aid to volunteer fire departments. It was at $46,774 last year, and it's at $46,774 this year. This is the life insurance and that we have for all of our volunteer firefighters. That funds the 30,000 funds that, and then the aid to fire districts is the state aid. And there's a breakdown in fire districts. If someone were interested, I could certainly give that to them.
So,
yes.
I now recall that we did that, but I'm being newly reminded that the township pays for that insurance rather than the fire districts themselves.
That's correct.
Pay that. Do you recall how that ever came about?
No, I don't, you know, it came about a very, very, very long time ago, long before me.
All right,
So I don't
go
know.
on.
And then there's also aid to first aids. It was, 16 was budgeted at $65,000, and it is again budgeted at $65,000. That's $58,500 in aid to the volunteer first aid squads that serve the town. That money is broken down based on a ratio of calls responded to, not actually calls received, but calls responded to. And when you take the number and just divide up the percentages, that's how the money is allocated to the individual first aid squads. And there's, again, $6,500 for the same type of policy for that's afforded the volunteer firefighters, life insurance policy.
Now, that aid to first aid squads, does any of that go to the Kendall Park First Aid
Yes.
Squad?
Absolutely. So it goes to all of the first aid squads that actually respond to our town, the volunteers.
Yeah.
So East Millstone, Kendall Park, Kingston, and Rocky Hill. No longer is any
But
money.
Rocky Hill can't because the bridge is out.
But currently that's the case, but over the course of a year, that's not the case.
The majority is still going.
The majority, actually, the majority goes to Kendall Park.
I was going to say Kendall.
Yeah, Kendall Park gets the most.
And East Mill, and
East Millstone's right behind them.
Yeah, and not that we don't, the other two are great groups, it's just those two.
Call volume.
Very
It's
high
all
volume.
based on call volume. And Rocky Hill and Kingston, and Kingston has really kind of been absorbed by the paid service in South Brunswick for their call response. So they haven't received money in I believe, the last 2 years. But certainly Rocky Hill has received money, as has at Kendall Park, the bulk, followed by East Millstone. Do I have any others? I'm looking. Unclassified, I got it. Tax appeal refunds. This is the money that we budget that goes into a reserve available for any tax appeal refunds that the township is required to make as a result of either settlements or court findings or so this money that's budgeted this year of $500,000 kind of echoes the last few years of $500,000 annually. Based on our current reserve, we anticipate that the $500,000 will be more than adequate to cover any settlements on tax appeals for 2017.
And the trend of that is going down, is that what
The
it is?
trend on that is going down. There's the more we get away from 2009 when we got hit with all of these tax appeals, and then they became multi-year appeals on the commercial properties due to the backlog of cases in the state tax court. We seem to see the light at the end of the tunnel now,
Finally.
and there's been less and less. And with the what I will call the now accepted fair assessments, specifically of the large commercial properties, being challenged less and less, that number should, continue to decrease.
Good news.
Good news. So that's tax appeals. Tax title lien foreclosures are budgeted at $50,000, and they'll continue at budget at $50,000. The amount last year was at $35,900. The $50,000 should be more than adequate to cover our tax title lien foreclosures. And then there's this line contingent, and you'll say, why do I have a contingency in the manager's budget? And then there's this thing called contingent that has $2,000. Well, I challenge you to ask any of your state legislators or anyone who was around probably, about 75 years ago, when the state legislature decided that every town must have a contingency in their budget, and it must be $2,000. But it has to be at least $2,000. It has to. So there it is. So we have this $2,000 contingency. Has it ever been spent, ever? I don't believe so.
That was back when $2,000 was real money.
That was probably a quarter of the township's budget in 1797. I know
had no town in
1797.
1797.
We had a town, but we were just incorporating, we're getting ready. Salary adjustments is the next one, there's $100,000 budgeted. That money's used when we have contracts that are out of date and we settle contracts and retroactive pay has to be paid. That's the money that's budgeted to pay those retroactive pays when we have to, when we have settled contracts that have been out for, any extended period of time. Accumulated leave. Andy, I almost want you to say this. Accumulated leave is just what it sounds. We budget for an amount that in the event that the township was hit with a mass exodus of employees and who cashed out accumulated leave, this would be the money that would pay that. Thankfully, we haven't had a mass exodus any time recently, but you never know, right? And that's why you have to budget for it. And this is, again, one of those things that we must include. And it's the things that are looked at when we're evaluated for bond rating and what have you, is that we have money set aside for those purposes.
I see that the amount was decreased in 2016, but is back up to 700,000 this year.
That was actually an accounting adjustment that was made last year because we had extra money in our reserve for our PERS payments, but we had to show the full amount we were paying, so we reduced this line in the budget, but 700,000 actually went into the reserve.
And there you have it. Okay.
That's it?
That's it for all of the appropriations, and now I'll invite Mr. Hodgelick to come up here and sit next to me. When you weren't here, we talked about you, Mr. Hodgelick. It was all good, I assure you. Revenues. I tend to defer a little bit to Mr. Hodgelick, who pays far more attention to the revenues than I do, I admit. I try to keep spending in check, and he kind of makes sure that we have the money rolling in. So here's a microphone for you, and you can talk a little bit about revenues as I get to the page.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vornlucker. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Once again, the township has had a positive variance with respect to its revenue realization for 2016, and we're proposing to have the 2017 budget reflect pretty much to the level of revenue realization in 16. So there was actually a positive variance of about $200,000 on your miscellaneous revenues, and we're really basically using those same amounts that were realized in 16 for the projection in 17's budget in terms of miscellaneous revenues.
So,
Going further than at this point
so
on that?
in English, we're making what we.
So in English, we are projecting that we will make this year as much as we made last year in the miscellaneous revenue categories. The miscellaneous revenue categories are those things generally other than tax revenue. So there's the miscellaneous revenue and there's the tax revenue. So we're anticipating that we will make as much as we made last year in those things other than taxes.
And that has nothing to do with construction code.
Well, it does. Yeah, that's why it's a miscellaneous revenue, certainly. And so construction permit fees, court revenue, and anything that you think of that causes people to give us money other than paying their taxes. And there are many things that we collect money for other than taxes, and that's what we're talking about there. And then we'll talk about tax revenue in a second. So are there any questions about
I thought the construction code revenue was rather significant.
It is.
So 200,000 is.
No, there's what.
You realized 2.4 million in.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember it was in.
No, what he was saying was a difference, not.
Okay. Oh, I got it.
Not a total.
Right. Your total miscellaneous revenues realized in 2016 was 14.2 million in total.
of which 2.5 million, give or take, was construction code. There's the hotel tax revenue, there's the money from the sewage authority, there's a FEMA reimbursement, there's state aid, offsets from the Board of Education, pilot payments, all those types of things are miscellaneous revenues.
And the tax, getting taxes roughly 30 million?
Correct.
A little more than
Well, a
that,
little more.
33,
30 million
34.
Plus 14 million, 44 million. Got another 16 million.
There's open space isn't in that, right?
No.
That's a separate.
It's a municipal budget.
Well, you start off with the way your revenue schedule is pictured, is displayed, it starts off with your fund balance. All right, so last year we had a fund balance anticipated of $6 million that balanced the budget.
Right.
You had roughly 14, so we're at 20, and then the rest of it was your tax levy.
Which was about 34 million
yeah.
of change.
Right.
Which got us to like 54 or 55 million total.
Right.
Which is where we were.
Yep.
Which is where we are again this year.
Yep.
Actually, just a tiny bit less.
So there's the breaking news. Want to spell that out?
So the breaking news is that as we anticipate preparing the budget document, it will be slightly less in appropriations than last year. Slightly more, just slightly more in revenue.
Correct.
Which results in slightly less utilized from fund balance.
Correct.
So in English, that means we're spending less and we're taking in slightly more. And therefore
Correct.
saving a little bit of money.
So we're saving a little bit of money and doing the same things that we used to do, plus a little bit more in this budget, like hire an economic development coordinator.
So we have cut the budget and we are doing more.
Yes, that is exactly what we're doing.
Okay.
All of those will be discussed at length on the 28th at our regular council meeting when we introduce the budget, and I can do a budget statement and budget presentation. And I know, Mr. Mayor, you have some things that you'll want to talk about at that meeting as well. But the anticipation is that we will have a budget introduced that is slightly less than the 2016 budget, with slightly more revenue, utilizing slightly less fund balance to balance.
So we will, for the 7th year, we will be below the 2009.
Yes, we will be.
Kudos to you and your staff,
Yes,
Mr. Manager.
I'd like to add to that. In the years I've been on the council, this seemed to be the tightest budget I've ever seen in the years that I've heard the presentations. I think you and your staff have done a very good job. Congratulations.
I appreciate your appreciation. You are correct in directing it at my staff. I wrangle them, as that word was used earlier, but they have done a tremendous job. I became manager at the end of 2012, and my first budget in front of you as a body was for the 2013 budget. And since 2013's budget, my direction has always been the same to them, unless it is absolutely necessary here to hold your spending to what it was in the previous year. And they have done it, and they have not done it begrudgingly. They've done it creatively at times, and they found different ways to do things, and they found more efficient ways to do things, and they continue to get the job done, and they continue to get more work done than they did in 2013 when I first took over. I truly believe that more is done now than when I first became manager, and I'm very proud of them, and they do a very great job, and so I'll pass on your appreciation to all of them.
And I would also like to thank my fellow council members for looking at you and staring at you when money is spent and basically transmitting the idea that that's the kind of thing we want. So, but the staff is the ones who actually carry that burden.
They do.
And you too, Kath. Good job. Lots of work.
And all of this work, just for as all this lady over
Yeah.
here on my left, and so I say thank you to her often at this time of the year, in particular, throughout the year for all of the work she does. But all of the things to prepare for all of this and to do the budget itself, really, the nuts and bolts of it come from Kathy and from Andy, who is also very, very, very helpful at this time of year. Trust me.
And Andy makes it so we can understand it. Just now, he's spoken in accountant-ese, which I often lambaste him for. But generally, when you beat on him a little bit, it comes out in plain English and makes it so we can understand, so we can help guide. But good work, sir.
Yes, good job.
Good job.
Okay, so the next step will be on the 28th. We should have a budget document to introduce, and like I said, we'll have a little bit of a show, and usually it's the mayor that puts on the
mayor's
show.
PowerPoint
Right,
show.
but the mayor, so I'm sucking away from the mayor his PowerPoint. No, I'll be doing a PowerPoint.
Oh, wow,
And I'm sure he'll have some input over the next few days as to what he wants to see on that screen, but we'll do a little bit of, and to talk about the comparison from where we are several years ago to where we are today. And we're not out of the woods completely, but we're in a whole lot better shape than we were a few years ago.
Amazingly
Absolutely.
better shape.
Yes, we are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, and that's
But
all I
the
have,
good
Council.
news.
Good.
Stay tuned.
Anyone with
Thank
any
you.
comments in general on the budget? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Be well, Franklin.